Hello, welcome again. Today we are going to continue our modal verbs, and the last time we learned models of possibility, and today we are going to learn models of obligations. And about so the first use of modal obligations we talk about is a strong obligation when we use must, will, and need. When the obligation is very strong, for example, and we use students must register in the first week of term. So must here. So here students must register in the first week of term. It means that they have no other option. They have no choice. So this is an obligation. This is a rule. So they need to do it. Yes, students must register. For example, will. How can we use will in this? All sales staff will arrive. Will arrive, will arrive, right? Will arrive, we say will arrive for work by 8:40 a.m., right? All sales staff will arrive. This is a rule. Usually every day, and they arrive in the office, for example, 8:40. So this is a rule, strong rule and a strong obligation. If they don't arrive, they will have some problem. Okay, so in this case we have to use will, and it indicates a strong obligation because it's a official formal rules. And the next use of we also use need when we talk about strong obligation. For example, need I get a visa for Vietnam? Yep. So this is a question. For example, I'm asking some of my friend or acquaintance about, because I was really interested and I want to go to Vietnam, so I didn't really know, do I need a visa or not? So I says, need I get a visa? So need, is it compulsory? Is it really necessary? If I don't have a visa, they won't allow me to get in to the country, right? So this is a very strong obligation. So then we use, when the obligation is strong, we use must, will, and need. And the second use of obligation when we use, for example, when it's a prohibition, when it's prohibited to do something, and then we use the expressions in the modal verbs like must not, or mustn't, may not, and cannot or can't, right? And it is a kind of prohibition that you are not allowed to do it. For example, students must not use the staff car park. So there is a car park for only staff, right? Only staff of the university or only staff of the school. So students, they are not allowed to use. Они здесь не должны, right? Они не имеют права, да? Если они делают, тогда будут какие-то наказания. Или штраф, right? So in this case you have to be careful. Students must be careful about, they must not use the staff car park. For example, another example, books may not be taken out of the library. I think all of you know that in some library, for example, you are allowed to read a book or read books in the library, but you may not take this book at home, right? So it can be said, right, may not be taken, right? Books may not be taken out of the library. Yes, so this is a strong prohibition. So another prohibition, for example, you can't come in here. You can't come in here. You can't come in here. For example, this is only for staff, right? The staff room, or only for personal, right? So officials, for example, they can get in. So if you are a common people, general people, so you can't come in. Вы не можете войти, да? Это как для staff, для персонала, да? So we use can't. You can't come in. So this is a prohibition, and we use the modal can't and may not or must not. So these are all about prohibition. Another very interesting use is a weak obligation or recommendation, when the obligation is not directly imposed by the authority, or it's not a rules. It's like recommendation or good advice from your experience, your personal life, then we use such expressions. And the modal verbs should, for example, we have to use should, or ought to, or might, and or shall. But we use shall in questions most of the time. We use it for questions. For example, in the should, you should try to work harder. For example, your friend can tell you that you should try to work harder because he knows that you are a bit lazy and you're not very serious. So he can advise you, he can recommend that you should try to work harder. Otherwise, I mean, you will fail in the exam, right? So you should. So this is a weak obligation. Another example with ought to, if you look at, she really ought to wash her hair. Ought to. So this is not a strong obligation. But for example, she came to office without washing her hair. I mean, it sounds, I mean, ridiculous, but it's maybe. So I mean, some colleagues or someone else says that she really ought to wash her hair because it's really smelly. It's really awful. Yeah, when you don't wash your hair. So this is kind of a bit weak obligation, that not very strong. But she could come, I mean, without washing her hair, but it's not very strong obligation. And the next one, you might see what John thinks. You might see what John thinks. Might. So might is a kind of bit as obligation or recommendation that we could say. You might see what John thinks. I mean, there is a probability and then obligation from other side, but not very strong. Yeah. Then we use might. You might see. Maybe you might not. Right. So there is in doubt. And another example, when we use shall in question, for example, what shall we do? What shall we do? For example, you don't know, so you ask your boss, what shall we do in our next meeting, for example, right? What shall we do? So shall can be used as a kind of recommendation. I mean, so you're asking for help, you're asking for some recommendation. And so we use these modal verbs, should, ought to, might, and shall when it's a weak obligation or recommendation. But we use shall, for example, when it's a question, when you're asking questions or recommending for recommendation. Yeah. And another use of modal obligation is willingness, when we talk about our willful activity, volunteering or resolving, for example, or insisting, and offering, for example, insisting, настаивать, да? Offering at the предложение, resolve at the решать, volunteering at the volunteer, right? So we use will, and we use also shall, will and shall, but again shall in the question. For example, if you will come this way, for example, you say asking for willingness, if you want to go right in this way, if you will come in this way, you will reach very quickly. All right, if you will come this way, I can show you the path, right? So this is a will in when we talk about the willingness or our will to do something. For example, another example, I will pay for the drinks. So these are actually offering. So you can say I will pay for the drinks. So you are offering to pay for the drinks of your friends, maybe, or your colleagues. So you are you're offering a treat. Yeah. So this is kind of bit obligation, but it's more like an offering. And another example, shall I give you a hand, when you're offering for help, right? Again, this shall, it means you are asking, and you are asking that you can do something. Shall I give you a hand? So shall I give you a hand? For example, the corridor, you meet your teacher, and he's with many books, and it was difficult for him to carry this book. So you can say, shall I give you a hand? Shall I give you a hand? So I mean, just shall I help you, right, to carry your books or stuff, right, like this. So we use also this obligation, modals obligation, willingness in case of willingness, or when you want to do something voluntarily, or when you're offering. Yep, another type of obligation, that's a permission. When we say разрешение, permission, right? So we use different modal verbs, like for permission can, could, may, might, and so on, right? So most of the time we use these expressions, for example, for permission. You can use the car if you like. So you are giving your permission to your friend, maybe, right? For example, he can ask you, all right, can I use your car? You can say, oh yeah, you can use your car. You can use my car if you like it. And another example, could I talk to you for a minute? So for example, you want to get a permission, could I talk to you for a minute? Yeah, so this is a polite way of asking, and you want to say something, maybe, right? May I use your phone? May I use the phone, right? May I use the phone? This is the same as expression when we ask for permission. And another way of, like, for example, do you think I might take a break now? Do you think I might take a break now? So this is like indirect way of asking questions, but we use it when we ask for permission, right? Do you think I might take a break now? So maybe you're just a bit confused, you're in a doubt, so you are asking your colleagues or your partner, do you think I might take a break now? So you want to just confirm it and get the permission from that person. So it's very easy actually. Мы это очень просто, когда мы употребляем вот это разрешение can, could, may, might. Мы употребляем как And the next one, obligation, which is absence of obligation. We talked about all the time the 5 points about obligation, but now when there is no obligation, so we use needn't. Absence of obligation, so we use needn't, right? So you needn't work this Saturday. You needn't work this Saturday. It means that it's not necessary. It's not important for you to work this Saturday. You can have a rest. You can enjoy your weekend, right? So this is an absence of obligation. We use needn't. You needn't. Need is a modal verb in this case as well. It can be used in the main verb and modal. The last but not the least, it's ability. When we want to express ability in terms of obligation, that we say, this is not actually obligation, this is more like an ability that we talk about when you use can or could. For example, in the present tense we use can, and in the past we use could. For example, she can speak she can speak 6 languages. She can speak 6 languages. For example, I had a student, and she could speak 6 languages too. I mean, most of the European languages, and also Japanese. So this is an ability, general ability, when we say she could speak, right, or she can speak 6 languages. But for another example, when we use could in the past, right, you could get to my old schools by bus, but not by train. You could, right? So the прошедшее время, right? The past tense we talk about. You could get to my old school by bus, but not by train. So it was ability when we talk about. So that's quite a long session. Today we talked about different types of obligations, modal obligations that we use. For example, strong obligation, we use must, will, need. When we talk about prohibition, запрет, we use must not, may not, or cannot, can't, right? And also weak obligation or recommendation or suggestion or advice, we use should, ought to, might, and shall. Shall in basically in question, right? In question. And willingness, when we talk about volunteering and resolving or insisting and offering, we also use will and shall as a modal verbs to express different offerings and willingness to do something. And permission, when we talk about the permission разрешение, then we also use can, could, may, might to give permission or to take permission by asking questions, right? And when it's an absence of obligation, so you can use needn't or need not, needn't, right? Needn't do something, right? And also finally we talked about ability, general ability, when we say can or could, right? It's a general ability. But when we talk about specific ability, we use is able or was able, right? Is able to or was able to, right? In this case, we only use the modal verb. So that's all for today. I think it's a very long lesson. So I hope you got this point, which I've tried to cover, and at the end of the day, I think you need more practice, because as I always say, practice makes perfect. So you need to do more practice. You need to repeat, and you need to use the grammar in context. If you use it, then you learn it. If you don't use it, you lose it. So that's all for today. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye bye. Спасибо.